We've all heard the story. A woman with snakes for hair. A gaze that turns blood to marble. A monster so terrifying that even heroes refuse to look her in the eyes. But here's the question no one asks. What kind of mind do you need to become the villain everyone agrees to fear? Because sometimes the monster isn't born in darkness. Sometimes the monster is manufactured by the people who need a warning sign. Tonight, we're going back to the myth we think we know. And we're going to ask something dangerous. What if Medusa wasn't the villain? What if she was the lock placed on a sacred door, and Perseus was the man sent to steal the key? Medusa's name usually arrives already cursed. A punchline in pop culture. A boss fight in a video game. A face you're allowed to hate without learning. But before the snakes, before the stone, she had a childhood. And in the oldest fragments, she had a family. Medusa is one of three sisters, Stheno, Euryale, and Medusa. Daughters of ancient sea forces, sometimes Phorcys and Ceto, sometimes the wider, nameless ocean itself. Her sisters are described as immortal. Medusa is the odd one out. The only one who can bleed. The only one who can die. And psychologically, that matters. Because imagine growing up among beings who cannot be touched by endings. Imagine being the sister who learns fear. Who hears the future moving toward her like footsteps. So Medusa does what mortals do when they can't control fate. She seeks meaning. Order. A vow. In the most popular version, she becomes a priestess in Athena's temple. Not just beautiful, renowned for it. And beauty, in myths, is never just decoration. Beauty is currency. Beauty is a target. Then comes the moment the world uses to brand her forever. Poseidon desires her. A god whose desire is not a request. And in some tellings, he takes her in Athena's sacred space. After that, the story sharpens into something simple. Convenient. Athena curses Medusa. Snakes. Fangs. A stare that petrifies. And everyone nods. See, they say. Monsters are made by punishment. But that explanation is too clean. Too satisfied with cruelty. So let's ask the question the myth avoids. Was it really a curse? Or was it a transformation? With a purpose no one wanted to admit? If you look at Medusa's curse like a psychologist, like someone studying villain origin stories, you'll notice something. Her new powers are not random. They're not theatrical. They are strategic. The snakes. A living alarm system. Movement. Hissing. A crown of warning signs. And that gaze is not an attack. It's the ultimate boundary. A boundary so absolute it doesn't argue. Doesn't plead. Doesn't negotiate. It simply says, stop. And in a world where a woman's no can be ignored by gods, Medusa becomes the one person whose refusal cannot be overruled. So consider this possibility. What if Athena didn't punish her? What if Athena weaponized her? Not out of hatred. Out of necessity. Because sacred places attract the powerful. And the powerful, historically, do not like boundaries. Medusa's gaze becomes a sacred lock. An unassailable shield. A guardian that even immortals think twice about approaching. And here's the psychological twist. When someone is violated, the mind often rebuilds itself around safety. Hypervigilance. Isolation. A nervous system that never fully relaxes. Medusa doesn't just become dangerous. She becomes unreachable. A living defense mechanism. The myth calls that monstrous. But to anyone who has ever had to protect themselves alone, it looks a lot like survival. Now, let's talk about the real villain in the background. not Poseidon, not Athena. The villain is the story itself. Because myths aren't just entertainment. Myths are social training. They teach you who to fear and who to obey. And historically, there is one archetype society has always struggled to tolerate. A woman who cannot be controlled. The powerful feminine, unyielding, independent, unapproachable, has often been rewritten as a monster. Not because she is evil, because she is inconvenient. Then comes the second layer. The othering of the unusual. Humans have a reflex. When we don't understand something, we label it. And when we fear it, we dehumanize it. Medusa's body becomes the evidence used against her. Snakes. Fangs. A face the world can point to and say, that is not like us. So it must be wrong. It must be dangerous. It must be destroyed. And here's the perspective shift that cracks the whole myth open. If Medusa was guarding sacred spaces, if she was preventing violation, then who benefits from calling her a monster? The ones who want access. The ones who resent boundaries. The ones who need the world to believe that defense is the same thing as evil. Medusa's power solves one problem and creates another. Because if your defense is absolute, so is your solitude. She can't live among people. She can't be seen without risk. She is forced into exile, into a place where the world can pretend she's purely a threat. That's the paradox of villain psychology. The thing that protects you can also trap you. And then comes Perseus. The myth calls him a hero. But look at his strategy. He doesn't face her directly. He uses gifts. A mirrored shield. A sword. A plan designed to kill without eye contact. Because even the hero understands something important. If he looks at her honestly, he might not be able to do it. So he approaches through reflection, through distance, through narrative, and in the most haunting detail. Medusa is often described as asleep when he strikes. Not roaring, not rampaging, sleeping. And when Perseus cuts off her head, something almost poetic happens. From her body are born Pegasus and Chrysaor, new life erupting from the moment she is silenced. Even in death, Medusa creates. But the world doesn't mourn. The world collects. Her head becomes a weapon. A trophy. Later, a symbol placed on shields and temples. So ask yourself, was Perseus liberating the world? Or was he completing a fear-driven agenda? Removing a boundary so the powerful could move freely again? Medusa's story is being reread by people who recognize the pattern. A survivor labeled dangerous. A boundary called violent. A woman punished, not for what she did, but for what happened to her. Today, Medusa has become an archetype of resilience. Of misunderstood power. Of defiance against unjust labeling. Not because she's perfect, but because she's real in the way trauma is real. Medusa teaches a brutal lesson. Sometimes you don't get to choose what you become, only what you do with it. And if her gaze is the ultimate defense, then maybe her message is simple. Protect what is sacred. Protect your boundaries. Protect the parts of you the world feels entitled to invade. Because if the myth can turn a violated priestess into a monster, then it can turn anyone into a villain. As long as the powerful need someone to blame. So next time you hear the name Medusa, don't picture a creature. Picture a warning. Not about her. About the world that needed her to be monstrous. And maybe the most terrifying part of Medusa was never her gaze. Maybe it was the truth you'd see if you looked. If you want more dark mythology stories that unpack villain psychology, hit like, subscribe, and tell me in the comments. Which monster should we reinterpret next?